This is part 3 of the engine rebuild series for beginners. This is the final video. In part 2, you saw us get all the pistons in. We checked the clearance from the rod bearings to the crankshaft, make sure everything was good. Got everything installed. We got the oil pump in, but unfortunately we're going to revisit that because I completely forgot about the windage tray. So we had to remove that. We got our rotate assembly all finished up. We got our timing chain in place. We got all of our lifters in, so we're ready to move forward with the cylinder head. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this series so far. But in this video, we're hopefully going to finish it all up, and we got some news at the end of this video, so stick around. So we had to tap our dowel pins back in. Machine shop removed them when they checked the deck. This is all we need to do here. These head gaskets are the same. Passenger side to front, passenger side to driver's side. They are not different, and I always put the writing up. So we want to line this up on those dowel pins before we set it down, so that we don't drag across that gasket. There we go. And then there's 3 different size bolts. A bunch of short ones, some longer ones, and 2 middle ones. They go on the very outside, so I put them in first. That way it's held and won't fall off the engine. Okay. Now that it's held like that, now we'll go through and put thread sealer on the rest of these, because again, these go into coolant passages. And again, it's very important you get all the thread sealer off these bolts, because if you don't, when you go to torque it, sometimes it can affect it because that thread sealer becomes very hard. So then your torque, when you come up against that on the threads, the torque can give you a false sense of where you're at, because it has to come through that hard chunks that are left on it. And I always clean these real good with brake parts cleaner too, because you don't want any oil on these threads when you're putting this together, because then the thread sealer won't work. It'll just repel that oil. Sometimes I get a little too much, I'll just go on another one. Just spread it over to another bolt. Okay, once I've got them all in, I'm going to start in the center. I'm just going to snug them up. So this gun will never make it to 65 foot-pounds, which is what this torque is. So I can go ahead and give it a little bit more beans. Okay, now it's time for torque sequence. And the torque sequence calls for 65 foot-pounds. And it says to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they just keep going out, just like I did. It's important you don't jerk on a torque wrench. It needs to be nice and smooth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. I'm just going over top again, just to make sure I didn't miss any. And I'm going this way so that I don't hit the same one twice. So far, so good. Okay, we're good. We got them all. So the next step is we want to put our push rods down in, but before we do, we want to clean down the inside. There's actually an oil passage in there. We want to make sure it's not plugged. And then we want to blow it out and dry it. So we'll take a blow gun and we'll blow each one out, get all the crap out of them, make sure they're 100% clear. These are going down into lifters that have oil in them, so we don't need to use assembly lube on that end, but we do on the rocker end. So, like I said, we'll get through this, blow them dry, and we'll start putting them in. Since we have new lifters and this engine has all new rockers, pivots, and nuts, orientation to these push rods doesn't matter. Condition of the ball end certainly does. Sometimes these, when they don't get oil, they'll get worn. It'll kind of be oblong like a football. These ones are all in nice shape. Clean them all out now. So let's make sure they're resting down in the lifter where they belong. We need some lube on the top of these before we set the rocker on them. Lubriplate 105 is what I used to use. Put a little on the valve stem as well. And we're going to set the rocker down on here, and the rocker needs to go right in there in the push rod. It needs to go in that valley. And then we're going to put a little assembly down in there, because this is the pivot. This is what it's going to pivot on. So we need it to have some good lubrication down in there. And we'll just drop this down in. Make sure we're on the push rod right there. Drop us in a little assembly lube. Some on the ball here. Down in. Get the nut on. These are a locking nut. They're a three-sided peened, so they're not supposed to back off. I usually use Lubriplate 105, but there's been a lot of controversy over that stuff in recent years, and filters and whatever. But this is what was recommended by an engine builder that I do know. This is what he likes to use. We'll get all this in here, and then we're going to adjust all these rockers before we put the valve covers on. I think the Lubriplate 105 probably stays in place longer than this does, because as we assemble, I'm seeing some on the floor. But there's one side. Now we'll just go ahead and do the other. So we've got all the rockers on, and we need to adjust these. So when we adjust these, there's two different ways we can do it. One way is we have the engine on top dead center, number one. So that means that both the intake and exhaust valves are closed. So we could adjust these and then move the crank 90 degrees, which would take us to the next cylinder in the firing order, which is 1-8. And then we could adjust those two, and then we could go another 90 degrees and do the next one in the firing order, which I think is 1-8-4-3-6-5-7-2. I think that's what it is on small block. But we can go in the firing order by moving the crank 90 degrees each time, or we can do where we're on number 1 top dead center, and we can adjust all of the valves that are closed at that time, which is the way I'm going to do it. So that means we can do, here, you can see this here. I wrote this down to make it easier. So number 1, compression stroke, top dead center. The cam gear, that dot that I showed you will be at 12 o'clock, and the crank will be at 12 o'clock. That's number 1, top dead center compression stroke, okay? Then we can adjust, while it's in that position, intake valves 1, 2, 5, and 7, and exhaust 1, 3, 4, and 8. You see how we have 1 and 1 on number 1 top dead center that can be adjusted. And that's easy to tell because when you go to adjust it, you will be taking up the slack in here is all we're doing, and it won't be actually opening any valve. That's the purpose. You're trying to adjust this when it shouldn't have any tension on the valve, so you get an accurate adjustment. So you look here, we're at on the timing gears, we're at 12 and 6. So in order to do this the way I'm telling you, we're going to take and run our valves. You see that most of them you're really not moving at all, very little. And we'll bring our dots, the crank at 12 o'clock and the cam at 6 o'clock. Okay, so those should line up like that. And now we can run through this adjustment that I'm showing you, which will be, now we're on compression stroke. So a good rule of thumb is these are lock nuts. So in order for these lock nuts to work, they're going to have to be below there and engage in the threads. So we're going to adjust this, and we're going to use the up and down method. Let me get my paper, I'll show you what we're talking about here. So since we're on number 1 top dead center, 12 and 12, we're going to adjust intake and exhaust on number 1. And we're also going to adjust intake on 2. So we'll probably just go intake on all of them, adjust those, and then go to the exhaust. And to adjust them, all we're going to do is keep checking this. We have play, okay. Once we get to 0 play or 0 lash, there's nothing up and down. I like to go another 90 degrees. So I will literally put my ratchet here and go 90 degrees beyond, past that. And that one's adjusted. So this is the exhaust one, by the way. But this is, it's not a big deal because we were going to do the intakes and the exhausts. We were going to do the intakes first, but we've already done the exhaust. But this is the intake. I should have pointed that out. So we're just going to adjust it until we take the slack out. You see we still have that push rod moving.
I mean, not really, because your hands...
Well, go this way.
Okay.
You can see we have just a little bit. Now it's gone. So then what I'll do is once we take out that lash, now we're at what's called 0 lash. There's 0 play in there. Now I'll just take my ratchet, put it at 3 o'clock and go to 6 o'clock. I go 1/2 of a turn beyond 0 lash. So that was number 1 intake. So now we're going to go to it says number 2 intake, which is over here. So then we just find the intake one, which here's our coolant passage, here's our intake, here's our exhaust. So this is our number 2 intake. So it gets less and less here, and then right there it's gone. And then we got 0 lash. No, we're still doing. Sometimes that socket will play tricks on you. Right there, it's gone. So you can look and see how much thread is down here. And we've gone our 0 lash, but now we want to do 90 degrees more. So if we're adjusting these correctly, we should have about the same amount of thread sticking out on each one of these. So that's number 2 intake, again, followed by the runners. Next one is number 5 intake. So it's 1, 3, 5. Here's our intake for number 5. This is exhaust. So we'll take this one and we're going to run it down. There it is right there. Okay, now we'll go another 90 degrees. And again, if we've done it correctly, we should have about the same amount. Now these are press-in studs in the head that we're screwing down onto, so they may vary slightly. So that's number 5 intake, so now number 7 intake. So it's the one right next to it. Okay, we're there. And 90 degrees. Okay, that is all the intakes we can do. So now we can do exhaust, which is this one, that's one I started with, I made a mistake. And then exhaust on number 3, which is 1, 3. So we can do exhaust, which is this one. Zero lash and 90 degrees. So that is number 3. Now we can do number 4, exhaust. So this is 2 and 4, and exhaust is right here, straight above. Okay. Zero lash. And 90 degrees. Again, threads look the same. That was number 3 on exhaust, and number 4 on exhaust. That was number 4. Now we need number 8, exhaust, which is 2, 4, 6, 8. And exhaust is right here. And then before we move this, I think a lot of times it's that ball pivot that's in there that kind of gets cocked a little bit, so if you tap on it, sometimes you'll get a little more play. I think we're there. Okay, so now we need another 90 degrees. So if we've done this right, we'll go back through in this position. Both of the push rods on number 1 should have 0 play in them. And then intake on number 2, so that's this one. Number 2 is good. And intake on number 5, 1, 3, 5. Intake is here, that's tight. And intake on number 7, which is right here, it's tight. Exhaust on 1, which is right here, is good. Exhaust on 3, which is right here, is good. And exhaust on 4, 2, 4, which is, oops,
yeah,
this exhaust here, right here, that's good. And exhaust on number 8, it's right here. So we're good. So that sequence is finished. So the next step we'll do is, look here, we'll go to number 6, compression stroke top dead center. So now we want the crank the cam at 6 o'clock and the crank at 12 o'clock. So we're going to bring the dots together now on the front. Just wait for them to come around. You'll actually start hearing valve train working. Yeah, it went past. If I go past, I'll just go around again. I'm not going to go back. I just prefer to go back around it. Remember, we need them to be together now. Okay, here we go. And there we go. Okay, now we're on the other side. We're 180 out now. So now what we're going to do is intake on number 3. So again, we have 1, 3, and the intake is right here. So we're going to adjust this one. Okay, it's there. And that was number 3 on the intake. 1, 3, intake. We'll go another 90. Okay, and intake on number 4. 2, 4. And this is intake right here. See how that did that? There was no play in there, and then I tapped on it. Okay, that's that one. And then 90. Okay, so that was number 4 intake. Now we're on number 6 intake and number 8. So both could be on this side. Intake is right here. There'll be these two right here. So that's there. Another 90. Now we're going to do number 8 intake, which is right next to it. You see the two intakes running right next to each other. You know, most of this is geared towards somebody that's probably never done this before. Go. But if you've got tips or tricks that you use when you're doing a small block Chevy, leave it in the comments. You might help somebody else who's looking for some more information. So we've done all of our intakes now. We'll do our exhaust, which is 2, 5, 6, and 7. So number 2 is on this side. Now we're looking for an exhaust. So obviously it's the exhaust is here. This is our exhaust. And we need 2, 2, which is here. That's our exhaust for number 2. That's tight. And 90. Next one is 5, I think. Yep, 2. 2, 5, 1, 3, 5, and it's exhaust, which is this one here. And it's good that when we get there, it hasn't been adjusted yet. It's a good sign we didn't make any mistakes, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times I think the socket kind of pushes on that ball too. That thing should still spin, but there's no play in it. And 90. That was number 5. So we have 6 now. 2, 4, 6. Next exhaust, look here, it lines up, not been adjusted. There's our exhaust. Go. 90. That's number 6. And we have number 7 left, which is the last one on this side right here, exhaust. Okay. 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 Now, we go through this, we should have no play on any of these push rods if we did it right. They should all have 0 lash. Now, when we roll the engine over, you should start to hear some compression. And everything's moving like it should. Okay. Now we're going to bring it on number 1 compression stroke again. I'm going to have you put your finger over here on this. I want to feel some compression coming out of the spark plug hole right here. Right there. Close it up.
I have my finger in it.
Can't really hear it.
I felt it just a minute ago. Yeah. Again.
Okay. You just felt it there?
Yeah, twice. No.
Okay, there we go. We're rolling top dead center. So now we can put our timing cover on and button it up, but that's the gist of the valve train now. Now it's a matter of putting covers on.
He forgot to put in the windage tray. So we had to... What, did you have to take the oil pump off or just loosen it?
Take it off. Yeah, it goes underneath the bolt of the oil pump as well. Not sure what's going on with these two, because that sure didn't go on very well, did it? Mm-mm. Maybe I'll just clean them up real quick. Have to retorque that now. That was 65, I think. Okay, I'll see what I can do about these two now. Clean them up. So I just took a thread chaser down and cleaned them up. Not exactly what you want to do at this stage of an engine build, but it is what it is. This is a timing cover that was on the engine, and unfortunately it has been over torqued and none of these are flat anymore, and I'm not gonna try and straighten it. For as cheap as this crap is, I'll just order up new. And we don't have gaskets for the valve cover. It just had these little washers on, which are not a sealing washer, they're just a common flat washer, so I'm going to order those up. So we need a timing cover. I may get different valve covers, we'll see. You might like something a little more shiny. Look how badly that was over torqued.
Oh my.
Yeah, that's a timing indicator. Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. So that's the technical part of the build. The only thing left is to do what I call dressing it, which is getting the valve covers on, the timing cover, oil pan, and intake exhaust. I can't do the rear main seal right now because it's on the stand. I don't want to take it off the stand until we have an oil pan. I don't know what we're going to do with this yet. I wanted to build it because we had all the parts and I had all that money and machine work to have it ready to go. I'm not certain, but we've been kind of kicking around the idea of putting it in the mini truck. The mini truck is only 30 horsepower. It's underpowered, it's a pig, it's two-wheel drive. If we do this, it'll become overpowered, automatic, and four-wheel drive. So that'll be a huge bill, we'll bring you along. But that's it for now. I'm gonna order up the extra things that we need. I don't know what we're doing for fuel supply intake yet, we'll have to see. But when we do something with it, we'll bring you along. I hope you guys enjoyed, hope it helps somebody. If you have some tips and tricks that wouldn't help somebody else, leave it in the comments, man. You never know when there's a guy looking for a specific question or an answer that we didn't address, so help them out. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the next one. For those of you who've made it to the end of the video, you notice a scenery change. We finished the 305, and I gotta tell you, I wasn't keen on putting it in the mini truck. It was just kind of basic, kind of simple, and I was hoping to do something a little more interesting with that build. So I had posted in a Facebook group of mine, the JC Smith Projects group, that I was gonna put it up for sale. And if it was still here by the time we got around to building the mini truck, so be it, it's going in. If it wasn't, great, we'd have other choices, we'll figure something out. Well, within minutes of me actually putting it up for sale, a friend of a friend messaged me and said, hey, I need that motor. He's building a 50s hot rod. He's looking for a nice fresh V8 small block. He wanted something with a mild cam, decent on fuel, and good idle quality. Well, that's everything that thing was. He's going to make it carbureted, so he's pretty happy. I gave him a bunch of extra parts we had laying around, so hopefully it'll make his project go good. So now the mini truck option for the engine is open again. I've narrowed it down. And I know there's a lot of people out there with suggestions and thoughts and what have you, but I think I know what we're going to do. But I'm not going to start that truck until after we finish a few other things that we already have in process. So that brings us to these two. We got some big work to do to that truck, and that's coming up next. And this is Project Hillbilly Deluxe. We're going to get this thing finished, and you're not going to believe what I'm thinking about doing to this truck. And it may involve cutting that frame right back off. So this is the end of the series for the 305 small block. I hope you guys enjoyed and look forward to some more of our regular kind of truck work. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.